Hi, everyone. First of all, can you hear me well from everywhere? Okay, that's good. Thank you, Alma. I actually didn't know that yesterday I was filling a questionnaire when you asked me how many times I've been to Utrecht, but it's good to know. Good, I think I've been 6 times now. I'm actually going through my head if there were actually 6 or 7, but well, we'll leave it at 6. So as she actually said, I am Maria. I'm originally Spanish, as you most probably can hear from my accent, that it happens to, from time to time, especially when I'm a little bit nervous, it actually comes up. But I've kind of a European profile. So I did my master's so my bachelor and my master's in Madrid. But the last year, I went on an Erasmus trip to Hamburg. Maybe some of you have already tried or have been to Erasmus. I know, of course, that with times of COVID, it has been a bit more difficult in the last years, but so it opened my mind, and I decided to stay. So I worked in a company for 5 years, working for underwater communications and imaging systems, which is pretty cool, but pretty exhausting, a lot of prototyping, and it really got me the idea of doing science, of really going back to science. So I saw an open position at Eindhoven University of Technology, and I said, okay, why not? So I moved from Hamburg. I basically packed my stuff, and I just came to the Netherlands. And I spent 4 years at Eindhoven University, which most probably quite of you have been. I mean, the bowling pins are like the highlights of the city. So yeah, and then after that, actually, I think I was maybe not so tired of the fries and the bitterballen and all this amazing Dutch cuisine. So I decided to go to Belgium, which is more of the same thing, but a little bit different. Don't tell them this, please. And I became a postdoctoral researcher at Ghent University for immersive media. Well, actually, everything that I've done has to do always with multimedia, so immersive media. And very recently, so like in 2022, I saw a position at KU Leuven, and well, I had to take it. So I went for it, and right now, since 2022, I'm actually a professor at KU Leuven. And with research interest, yeah, like I was saying, so basically multimedia, extended reality, but also about how we actually manage the perception of the user, how actually we can enhance the experiences for the world. And today, actually, I would like to just do with you a small trip down memory lane to understand how XR started, where are we, and how we can actually get to the future, okay? So actually, even if now it looks like XR is the new hype, so especially after the Vision Pro, so actually XR and VR have been actually around for a long time. So virtual reality, actually the first time that it was even said something like that, like an immersive device, could even be found on a short movie. In 1935. 1935, actually there was already some kind of glasses represented in which you could actually see some virtual reality. Moreover, actually, before the 60s, there was also this crazy machine, the Sensorama, which actually is where the people could just immerse themselves. But what is actually virtual reality? Well, I basically went, like most of the people do these days, I went to Wikipedia and I checked, after actually checking the profile of the first speaker today, of course. But I went and I actually went for the definition. A virtual reality is actually defined as a real or simulated environment in which the perceiver experiences telepresence. Telepresence meaning as I am there, I feel it real. But why is that? Why actually does virtual reality feel real? This actually has to do with the stereo vision. Has anyone know what the stereo vision is? Have you heard about it? Yeah. Yes, indeed. Removing the horse's sides on that. So, well, let me give a small explanation of what the stereo vision is and why it's actually important and why it basically changed the way that we do virtual reality, okay? So, if we actually have 2 eyes, sorry, I didn't paint the nose, but there should be a nose in between, okay? So we have 2 eyes, and we have a fixation point, A. So we actually have our eyes fixated there, okay? And all the points that actually are within that range are actually going to be the panenfusional area. And this is actually what makes that our eyes, that we have two eyes, we can actually get one image out of it. I don't know if you realize that sometimes you actually, if you close one eye, you have a slightly similar view of what you actually see, and the other way around. Yeah, here in the first row, they were already trying to make it, indeed. So, and that area is actually relatively small. It's an area in which we can actually see it, like a one image, but if we actually are beyond or before, can actually give some problems. But there are some ways to play around it. So imagine, for example, that we actually have a point B. And this point B is actually beyond this Panem area, okay? But we are making sure that this Panem area is hitting the retina on a point at the left, so on the point AL, so the same point that we actually had before, and a new point at B, but only one point at the retina. On the other hand, we could actually do something different. We could actually have a point at C. And this point at C, we still make it in the same way. So there is only one point at the retina that is fit for each eye. If we actually have this, we get they are called actually disparities. And this gives us the sensation of depth. So it means that if we actually have our fixation point at A, and there is something at B, we actually feel it like it's far away. And C will actually feel close away. This is actually it's basically human, so we don't really need anything to actually play with it. But how do actually virtual reality or stereoscopic displays actually play with this? So how they do it is actually we will have the display, and my fixation point A, which in this case is more like a virtual fixation point, will be there. And I can actually try, wait a second, because for a second, nearly my laptop tried to reboot. So I was there, the display. So basically we have the display. The display has a point A. And what we do is that we actually create 2 points of light on the side of the display, making sure that those points of light only hit on one point in each of the retinas. And if everything goes correctly, of course, there are a lot of physical laws that I'm not going to discuss now. Our eyes will feel it as an image that is beyond the display. And this is what we're going to call a positive parallax. On the other hand, if we actually were able to create this type of lights, but inverse, in which they actually cross, like what we were saying with point C, we get a negative parallax, meaning that the user has actually the feeling that something is close by. An object is closer than the screen. And by that, you actually have a stereoscopic view. That's actually how you create these virtual reality things. Once this started to be really a hit, which is we can do it for a lot of things, it actually just boomed. Basically, all displays, they do it like that. But not only head-mounted displays, I mean, things like this Viewer Master, which most probably you're all too young to know what it is, but or maybe in the storage room at your parents' home, they actually have something from when they were small. Who knows which one I'm talking about? So basically, they were just like a set of images, and you could just, with a clicker in blue, you could actually just go one image to the next. And then you actually can have a 3D vision. Well, we also have things like the HTC Vive that most probably you're more familiar with, or the HoloLens, like what the image at the beginning of the presentation had. And also the VR, the Google Cardboard, which is actually one of the first really low budget things. And I guess everyone knows what this one is. This is the new hype that actually Apple has rediscovered stereoscopic vision. So basically the Vision Pro, indeed. So this means that XR is kind of the new best thing for interactions, right? We have a lot of entertainment. We have even for some training, so like, for example, industrial training, but also for health. But I don't know what is your sensation with this, but me as a actually researcher working on XR, I always have the sensation that we are still working on a niche technology. So it's not really fully included. We use it as something fun, that we actually just put it on and we just start playing around. Ah, yeah, look at me. I'm actually using music for lightsaber, and then actually I'm killing zombies. Yeah, but we don't really actually make it in our life. And the reason for this is that current applications, they have quite some limitations. One that, in my opinion, is one of the most important ones is that after some time it makes you physically uncomfortable. So basically, it doesn't matter if it's 1 minute, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on the person, depending on the experience, you actually will end up feeling physically sick. It doesn't mean that you need to puke, but it could just mean that you actually have a bit of disorientation, that you actually have a bit of a headache, and so on. So that's also his problem. Secondly, while we actually have 5 senses, because we do have 5 senses, experiences, they only actually count to 1 or maximum 2. So mostly the experiences right now are visual, and if everything goes right, they actually add some omnidirectional audio. But if in most of the cases, the audio is just the audio that you hear on the side from the head-mounted display. And this is, of course, a problem because we cannot really immerse ourselves completely on that. And then finally, the problem is that they are mostly local, and they're actually dependent on the limit computations of power and computer backpacks, for example. This actually is in some of these parks for VR, you actually can see these backpack people with backpacks walking around, but still there are some limitations in terms of that. There is a possibility to make these head-mounted displays tether, so by cable, that you could actually connect them, and that is actually going to the network. But then some problems can happen, meaning that there are still quite some opportunities about what we need to do. So what is the future of XR? Or well, at least what I think the future of XR means. Maybe you actually will have another view. But I think about XR like, I don't know if you've watched this movie, Ready Player One. You guys were relatively young, but I'm guessing that maybe you went to the cinema. And in Ready Player One, basically all of the characters, they put on the head-mounted display, they have the haptic gloves, they actually are connected to this treadmill, and they can walk around so that they feel like they're actually walking in the virtual environment. And then they go to Oasis and they just start solving problems and actually end up just destroying the whole system. So of course, removing the post-apocalyptic idea of this movie, because of course this is all about why we actually had to go to the virtual reality because everything else was bad. How actually we should see the future of extended reality will be a way in which we have fully mobile extended reality users that are locally or remotely, and they are across the internet, and they are just seamlessly discussing, okay? So they are seamlessly speaking with each other independently of being there or not being there. However, this means that we are there in that situation in which we basically have one person connected to a computer, or in the best case scenario, we will have 3, 4 people that are connected to a certain application, and we want to go here. And in order to achieve this, there will be some barriers that will actually be related to the 3 big challenges that I've put about. So for the rest of my talk, the 25 minutes that I have, or no, more like 20 minutes. So I will try to unfold what we are doing from a research perspective to unlock the potential of this. I will first focus on why the XR experience actually triggers physical discomfort and why we need to actually understand it and how we could solve it. Then we can talk about the avatar, how we actually, the control that have it been embodied within the experience will actually help. And we will actually end up with the content creation, which will be actually related to what the previous presenter actually talked about with generative AI for images. So the XR experience triggers physical discomfort. This means that we actually need to go for a human-centric approach. So in most of these technological approaches, the human, even if all the technology is for the human, it ends up being the last one to be taken into account. And that becomes a problem. But the biggest challenge is immersion. Because immersion on itself, of why we feel immersed in the system, why we will feel actually immersed in a conference call, why would we actually feel immersed, is a very, very difficult and challenging phenomena that is actually composed by a plethora of factors. In fact, things like the quality of experience, so the visual, audio, and haptic quality that actually, so really the signal-to-noise ratios that we are actually talking about, that's going to be fundamental. But not only that, because sometimes it doesn't matter how good this, how high this quality is, we'll still have cyber sickness. We actually will trigger some discomfort, and this is actually something that comes really on a personal level. So there are some people that get more cyber sickness, people that get less. Moreover, we actually have things related to the I am there and I'm in that time. So basically space in terms of presence, I am feeling there, I'm actually feeling embodied in the location. So I cannot think about my real situation because I'm actually inside the environment, but also about the time, perception of time. And the problem with the perception of time is that by having a SATA head-mounted display, the cognitive load that we get actually it gets stronger, so it gets really, really higher. And because of that, our perception of time gets really distorted. Imagine when you actually were waiting for the results of an exam, and the exams of the result of the exams are actually late. And the 2 hours before the exams you know that are going to be released, you're basically not counting the minutes, you're counting the milliseconds. You're basically refreshing the page all the time. And this means that 2 hours actually feel like 3 days. And this is actually something that happens because of the cognitive load, because actually how immersiveness, how actually the virtual reality environment could actually do this to us. The problem with all these factors is that they are very, very difficult to measure. Well, first of all, they are very subjective. They depend on the user, but also they are on themselves. They have also a lot of things. And the most common way of actually measuring this has been by way of subjective studies. Don't know if you have ever heard of a subjective study. So in a subjective study, we basically, what we do is that we put someone in a very isolated environment. We sit them down on a table with a screen and another laptop next to them, and they actually need to rate the content. They start seeing one image after the other, and they have to say, I like this one, this quality was very good, this quality was very bad, this quality was very good, this quality was very bad. And that's actually is a standard. I'm not mocking things. So basically, this is how it's done nowadays still. In order to create BMAF, which is basically the most known objective quality metrics, they actually did it like that. They put people in a room to rate. But for immersive reality, this is not going to cut it, because there are a lot of extra things that actually can happen. Not only, like I was saying, not related to the quality, but actually related to a lot of extra factors. So that's why we actually need to go to a more immersive way of understanding, of asking people questions, of doing this evaluation of human perception, in a way that we can actually ask the users while they're actually in the experience how they're feeling. Of course, we cannot ask too many things, and we cannot ask it all the time, because if not, we will end up just being very intrusive. But that's how it actually should go. And it would actually increase accuracy and actually reduces this asking memory bias, because people tend to remember the last thing that they do better than the first thing that they did. So, well, usually they remember the first and the last one, but things in the middle, they just get a bit of messed around. So once that we actually have this subjective perception, we need to find ways in which we can actually model it. We can model it so that when the user actually puts on the head-mounted display, we don't need to keep asking them. We need to keep asking about how they're feeling. We will just know about it. Of course, with pre-training of this virtual data. And something that we actually do was actually to play with quality metrics and the use of machine learning based on these subjective evaluations to be able to have kind of a sigmoidal fitting, because that's how human perception actually works. So we are either very high or very low, and there is very, very little ground in the middle in which we are actually still accepting. So we actually could use this type of metrics, this type of subjective evaluations to fit in this type of models, which would give us real-time measurements of what actually it's feeling. Moreover, in order to assess things like cyber sickness, like presence, that are also physiological things, we will need to take care of more physiological data, such as EEGs, ECGs, and so on. And this is, for example, an experiment that we did last year with an EEG. So we actually put a user with an EEG on, and they needed to get into a virtual reality roller coaster and then put it on, and then just explain us when they were actually feeling a little bit cyber sick. So if you're feeling cybersick now, you can just close your eyes. And by that, we actually were able, of course, it's a very isolated research, but we were able to actually see some highlights about some signals in the EEG scanner would highlight that. In fact, we actually saw that for the index 1, which is actually related to the vigilance and the drowsiness, you can find a correlation between the appearance of cybersickness by means, of course, of questionnaires. So we also asked the users to tell us if they were feeling sick or not. We can actually find a correlation with that. And these type of correlations could actually be used to build models so that we can actually do this analysis. But when we actually have this analysis, this perception modeling, we'll need to find a way in which we actually can control these avatars, right? So the avatar still right now is very unintuitive. I don't know if you've been to any type of virtual environment, but sometimes it just looks like crap. So meaning that we really need to improve it. And like I was saying, we actually have 5 senses, but in most of the cases, we only have 2 that are actually taken care of, the visual and the audio. But there are actually a lot of more things. So there are, for example, there is a smell cage. It's called like that. I'm not inventing anything. So basically, you can enter, you can sit down with your virtual reality glass on, and you can feel like you are actually at the beach, because you actually get the smell of the sea coming to you. The problem with these type of things is that it's sometimes very subjective, and what for me smells like the coast, for other people, maybe it doesn't. Because for me, a coast, for example, is the Mediterranean Sea, with a bit of a smell of solar cream and like that. Maybe for you guys, a bit more like a bit more northern, so and a bit less salty. So basically, we need to go into things like that. Moreover, and this is something a bit more out there already exist some taste enablers. So actually, that you can use it like. It looks something that it shouldn't look like, but it's how it is. Sorry, that's how it is. So basically, it actually can enable the taste, so actually can send a signal, because after all, what our taste buds are just signals, and it sends a signal to that specific point. And the one that is actually more used nowadays is actually the haptics. So haptics by means of the haptic suit of Tesla, before Elon Musk went completely crazy. So they still did some interesting things, the Tesla suits, or some gloves like the Manus VR, which is actually from a company here from the Netherlands. Also some other things. And this is actually quite on the things that we are doing for research. So we are working a lot on haptic media. One of the experiences that we actually did was actually the multi-user XR pizza baking environment. The 2 users actually had the gloves on, and with the gloves, they actually had to play together to make a pizza. You also can see here the quality of the avatars. So this is actually in order to make things a bit easier to render on the head-mounted display. We actually need it like that. And then from time to time, they actually need to do stuff. Yeah, the waterfalls, very often. It's not that easy as it actually looks. I can tell you, I tried it myself. This is not me doing it, huh? Don't try to think it's me. So basically what we did is that we measured this. So we tried the users with the haptic gloves and also comparing it with the controllers themselves. So the controllers from the MetaQuest 2. And what we actually saw, I can move it, right? You're happy? Have you seen enough pizza, or do we need to finish the salami? Okay. Because it gets a bit more pathetic afterwards, so let's maybe move on. So basically what we saw, we asked, of course, we need to have, again, this type of statistical evaluations. And when we actually saw that in terms of immersiveness and connectedness to the system, actually the haptics really do their trick. The first 2, my color actually sounds a little bit, I don't know if you can see the color very well. So the first 2 figures are actually really related to the haptics. And we can see that actually the haptics, they provide better results than the controllers. However, in terms of performance and in terms of everything else, actually the controllers are kind of preferred. So this means that we still have to work on this a lot of things. So In addition to having the haptics, we also will need to do some more real-time pose estimation, which has been mostly done by computer vision. So this, for example, is a very known video of a real-time data, so frame by frame actually recording of the users. So they are basically, it's a flash mob. And this is state of the art, so it's actually how it's done nowadays. And we actually have very well leads, so it's a very well studied problem. But we need some line of sight, we need some, and it's also very prone to occlusions, and it has a lot of privacy issues. Another option would actually be to use wireless networks. That's something that we are doing together with University of Antwerp, in which we could actually use the normal Wi-Fi routers to measure the movement of the user. Of course, there are a lot of research going on, so for now, non-multiple users can be detected, but we are actually getting there. And then by means of machine learning, in more of the cases CNNs, actually we can get to very nice results. So in this case, for example, they were able to detect 10 XR-related gestures, so like, for example, pinching, grabbing something, and actually with only this technology. So we've talked about perception, we've talked about the avatar. Now we actually need some ways to make the XR a bit more engaging. And for that, this is actually a bit of a pickle. This is a very big challenge. Because for having interactive XR, we actually need a motion-to-photon latency that it's around 20 milliseconds. This is actually done by how it's actually done nowadays. And this will require capturing, streaming, and displaying. This is impossible. So also, because capturing, in order to make things photorealistic, we actually need things, massive structures like that. So light field technology, for example, requires like 256 cameras that are actually connected, and they record everything from a very single angle, and that data needs to be streamed. In a better case, actually point clouds, they have something a little bit less realistic, but it still requires a lot of computation, and making them real time is very difficult. TNO actually has a really nice encoder that does a little bit of real time encoding for volumetric media. This means that what we actually had before, like just in the order of 20 megabits per second maximum, we are now talking about very high data rates. So, well, as the previous speaker said, we have AI, right? We could always just try to see if we could actually get some AI technology working, right? Some generative AI to either enhance or to actually just reconstruct. So in my opinion, we should actually work on more like the reconstruction way. One example is actually Get3D. So Get3D is a current state-of-the-art system that by just training on a lot of real data and a lot of real figures, actually they are able to create photorealistic models of users. Of course, this means that it's quite a challenge in terms of how much computation they need, and also most of the cases they are not realistic. Other case, actually the nerves. I guess you all have heard about nerves, and well, the new one is Gaussian splattering. So nerves, actually, if you give them an RGB data set and then something related to the depth and the intrinsic parameters, they are able to generate things like this. However, they have quite some problems. They struggle a lot with capturing of dynamic data. So actually, they can really suffer. If there's something that doesn't have enough data to them, then everything becomes blurry and it doesn't really work, which is even worse than having a low-quality image. They cannot handle occlusion. And they're actually very scene-specific, and, well, computation intensity is just massive. I mean, as you saw also from the previous speaker, he actually had to bring a tower to make things work. Another option was actually for avatars. So we could actually try to do photorealistic avatars, like with this forum. So forum, actually, they were able, with just one single RGB, they are able to create a full model of the user. Of course, like in the backside, that they don't have an image. I don't know if you see it properly, but actually it's quite cut, so it's not really well designed. But still, there are actually a lot of things that are bringing us forward. And for example, in our own research, we are working on this type of thing. So we are doing now a 2D to 3D reconstructions in which we actually just put in an RGB image, and from the RGB image, we are actually able to just do the rendering, so actually to really create the 3D bounding boxes, and from the 3D bounding boxes, building the different figures. From there, actually, we still need to build on the texture, but well, that's still to come. And with this, so I've basically talked about 3 different research challenges. There are more challenges, but those are actually the ones that we are focusing nowadays, and I think that would really help to bring it further, to bring XR further, to bring it to the position in which we actually can work on it. So we've talked about how the physical discomfort is triggered and how we actually need to do something to improve that, to remove it even, if possible, but how difficult it is to actually to measure. Then we've talked about the control of avatars, how actually interactions could actually help. Not even haptics, also smell and taste, but that's still to come. I still have to see someone just putting a tube like that on their mouths without wondering. But also we'll need actually gesture control. We need to make sure that when a user does this in reality, the person actually in virtual reality sees also this. It doesn't see something completely different. And the non-realistic XR could actually be helped by means of generative AI, in which we actually could just enhance. So not substitute, but actually enhance the quality of everything. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank also my colleagues in Leuven, Ghent, and Antwerp, who have also helped making these slides.